Man, it was just a tough and fresh game to watch. Guys, welcome back to Mets Central. This is Mets Fan Reaction Game 85, where the Washington Nationals defeated the New York Mets by a score of 1-0, and the Mets and Nationals split this four-game series at a score of 2-2. And just a frustrating series for the Mets because obviously, like we discussed before, the Mets got out to that 2-0 series lead where they would get wins in both Game 1 and Game 2, both in extra innings, and we'd figure that the Mets would win the series either by winning the series 3-1 or even sweeping and putting their foot on the throat of the Nationals. But obviously they couldn't do that, and they follow up two really good wins with two just overall frustrating losses. Obviously, with last night blowing that 5-run lead and losing that game 7-5, and then today's game where they get very good starting pitching from Jose Quintana, but the bat just couldn't get going at all. So just overall, just really frustrating. But before we get into this game recap, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe. We would love that very much here. But yeah, let's get into the game recap. Jake Irvin will be on the mound for the Washington Nationals, and like I mentioned before, Jose Quintana would be on the mound for the New York Mets. Top of the first, to start the game, Francisco Lindor would ground out to second base. Brendan Nimmo would line out sharply to Lane Thomas and right, and Francisco Alvarez would strike out to end the inning. So nothing up for the Mets there. But moving on to the bottom of the first, CJ Abrams would ground out to Jeff Beano at second. Lane Thomas would then walk. He would steal second base. Fortunately, though, nothing going for the Nationals that inning as Harold Ramirez would ground out to Mark Vientos at third, and Joey Meneses would hit a hard line out to Mark Vientos at third base. Top of the second, Pete Alonso would ground to start the inning. DJ Stewart would walk. Mark Vientos would line out to Jacob Young at center field, and Ben Gamel would strike out to end the inning. Then bottom of the second, James Wood would ground out to Jeff Neal at second. Nick Senzel would then fly out to Tyrone Taylor in center. Riley Adams would hit a single. Fortunately, though, nothing on for the Nationals again that inning as Vargas would fly out to Tyrone Taylor in center. Then, top of the third, Tyrone Taylor would be called out on strikes to start the inning. Jeff McNeil would hit a single. And unfortunately, though, for the Mets, nothing going that inning as Lindor would strike out and Brendan Nimmo would line out sharply to Jacob Young in center field. Then moving on to the bottom of the third, Jacob Young would line out to Brandon Nimmo on left. CJ Abrams would then line out to Jose Quintana. Lane Thomas would then get a single. He would steal second base. Quintana, though, was able to get out of the inning as he would get Harold Ramirez to ground out to Lindor at short. So even though nothing going so far for the Mets on the offensive side, where pretty much up to that point they didn't have any great at bats, Jose Quintana, though, looked very good this game, which they desperately needed because even though Quintana, has struggled overall to start the season, he has looked, much better these last three games where he has pitched. Moving on to the top of the fourth, Francisco Alvarez would pop out to join us as first to start the inning. Pete Alonso would then strike out, and DJ Stewart would fly out to center field. Then bottom of the fourth, Joe Meneses would fly out to Tyrone Taylor in center. James Wood would walk. Then Quintana would make a big pitch, and he would get Nick Senzel to ground out into an inning-ending double play. Then top of the fifth, Mark Vientos would strike out. Ben Gamel would ground out to C.J. Abrams at shortstop, and Tyrone Taylor would line out to Lane Thomas in right to end the inning. Bottom of the fifth, Riley Adams would lead off with a single. Vargas would then, on a sacrifice play, he would get Riley Adams over to second base. Jacob Young would walk. So first and second with one out. Fortunately, though, Quintana would bolt down, wouldn't let up anything this inning. He would get C.J. Abrams to strike out, and then he would get Lane Thomas, to ground into a force out to Mark Vientos at third. So, like I said, so far, Jose Quintana pitching very well for the Mets and, keeping them in this game while the bats just remained lifeless. Then top of the sixth, Jeff McNeil would fly out to left field. Francisco Lindor would fly out to center, and Brandon Nimmo would fly out to center as well. Bottom of the sixth, Harold Ramirez would line out to right. Joey Meneses would then ground out. James Wood would get a single. Although, like I said before, Jose Quintana wouldn't let up anything that inning as he would get Nick Senzel to line out to Mark Vientos. Then top of the seventh, again, nothing on for the Mets as Francisco Alvarez would line out to second base. Pete Alonso would fly out to center field, and DJ Stewart with a lifeless at bat would strike out to end the inning. Then moving on to the bottom of the second, Jose Quintana would hit Riley Adams as he was the leadoff batter, so man on first. Then he would get Vargas would actually try to sacrifice Adams over to second. He would pop out though on a bunt. Then Jacob Young would line out to right field, and Quintana would get CJ Abrams to fly out to right field. Top of the eighth, Mark Fiance would fly out. Then Gamble would line out to right field, and Tyrone Taylor would strike out. Then we move on to the bottom of the eighth. Jose Quintana, after a very strong 7 innings, he would get taken out as Adrian Hauser would come in to relieve him. He would get Lane Thomas to strike out. Then the Nationals make a substitution as Jesse Winker came in to pitch. He came in to hit for Harold Ramirez, and which was kind of scary at that point because as they were showing us in SNY that Jesse Winker owned Adrian Hauser up until that point. I think he hit 6 home runs off him, and you were thinking like, maybe it's best that Adrian Hauser doesn't pitch to Jesse Winker here, and we were proven right as Jesse Winker would hit a solo home run to put the Nationals up 1-0. So just frustrating. Obviously, I don't want to put this on Winker. I mean, obviously, I don't want to put this on Adrian Hauser. It wasn't his fault. He made a bad pitch, and listen, when the offense doesn't score any runs, it's very hard to blame your pitching staff. Yeah, it was a bad pitch to Hauser made. It was a hanging curveball, but like I said, the bat's got to be a lot better. Hauser wouldn't let anything else go on that inning because he would get Joey Meneses to ground out and James Wood to strike out. Then we move on to the top of the ninth. The Mets obviously need a run, to either tie the game and get the extra innings, or I'm sorry, to tie the game and get it to the bottom of the ninth, or take the lead and force it to the bottom of the ninth as well. Derek Law would come in to replace Jake Irvin as he would pitch, 8 really good innings. Jeff McNeil would then strike out. Francisco Lindor ground out, and Brandon Nimmo would strike out to end the game. So, yeah, like I said before, just a frustrating game to watch, for the Mets, as Jose Quintana would pitch a really good game, as, like I said before, the Mets needed, the bullpen got rest, but just, the bat's just going to hit, simply as that. Just a lot of uncompetitive at-bats today, and I mean, the only really 2 positives from the game is, one, that the game only lasted an hour and 58 minutes, was just really short. But obviously, that's going to happen when we live in a world now with the pitch clock, and if teams aren't going to hit like today, the game's just going to move on really well, and Jose Quintana pitching well. But yeah, that's going to be it for this post game recap, guys. Obviously, like I said, like and subscribe. And before, obviously, I get off this video, happy 4th of July to everybody. And now the Mets head to Pittsburgh, where, I think it's a 4-game series now against the Pirates. And, now they're going to face Mitch Keller and Paul Skeens. So 2 very difficult pitchers. So the bats better be alive for those games, or, it's going to be a tough series for the Mets. But yeah, like I said before, guys, like and subscribe. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Let's go Mets.